Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with former major leaguer and 15 years in professional baseball, pitcher Brandon Puffer. Brandon, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation. Like I said, whenever I have an opportunity to sit down and talk baseball and talk life lessons with somebody, I really enjoy it. So I'm happy to have you on the show. But before we get started with the conversation, just tell my audience a little bit more in detail about who is Brandon Puffer today.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, just trying to trying to be a guy who's encouraging folks every day. But I did, as you mentioned, Dan, have a career in baseball and was a young man who had that dream and that goal in mind, and was fortunate enough to achieve that. And then probably even bigger story in my life is the story of a rock bottom and kind of a fall from grace, and then redemption from there. So just choices and consequences and trying to fill this God-shaped hole in myself with everything but God at that time. And so, yeah, I would say at this point in time, I'm a guy just still trying to, carry that cross every day and be good to people and be encouraging and positive. And also a coach. I coach, have a youth and high school program and still coach baseball. So like you, quite a baseball junkie, and really enjoy the passion of getting to pass that on to others of some of the great coaches that have coached me.
Yeah, I love it, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because love talking with like-minded people and guys who are giving back. I love the fact that you're out there coaching in the high school and youth ranks today. I mean, there's not a lot of not a lot of former big leaguers who have the time or patience
Yeah.
to do that. um, so but before we start talking about, let's just go back a little bit to your playing career. Like I said, you spent 15 years in professional baseball, and then parts of 4 or 5 years in the big leagues. So you were in minor league baseball for quite some time before you got called up. I think 6 or 7 years before you actually got called up. So, first of all, in those 6 or 7 years, were there points where it was like, man, I don't know if I can keep doing this $1,200 a month paycheck and working a side gig in the off season and trying to stay in shape. I don't know if I'm going to make it, or was it like, no, I'm just going to keep grinding, and I know that call is going to come. What was kind of your mental state as you were going through that minor league journey before you got to the big leagues?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. And to your point, I think it was about 7 or 8 years of minor league ball before I got that opportunity. And you know what? There certainly are times. I mean, the minor league, it's not glamorous, and it's well documented that folks know we're not making any money, and the stadiums aren't always full, and sometimes it's small towns and things of that nature. Long bus rides, travel, yada, the whole nine. But it is all I ever wanted to do. And when I would ask myself the question, of what would I rather be doing, it was always nothing. This is what I've always wanted to do. It's kind of a war of attrition. You just kind of have to outlast some guys, and some of it is that. I mean, some guys just get homesick, or they don't want to be broke anymore. They don't want to deal with the bus rides. And so I always kind of looked at that as an advantage from a mental standpoint of just being resilient in that, and that I'm okay with this. If this is what comes along with it, then this is what I'm going to do. And so certainly, I think any minor league will tell you there's times where it's like, whew, man, this is rough. This is a grind. But at the end of the day, you kind of embracing that journey and knowing what the possibilities are is what I tried to focus on day to day.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And then once you did get that call, I mean, like, you see it in movies and stuff like that. I remember the scene in The Rookie when he,
Oh yeah.
made the phone call back, to his wife at that time. But like, so for you, like, what was that moment like to get that again? I mean, childhood dream, all these hours and hours, not just in the minor leagues, but throughout youth ball, high school, college, and then boom, here it is, man. You finally got that call. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was surreal. It was awesome. I have God bumps right now as you asked the question. I really do. And so I was in New Orleans, AAA with the Houston Astros, pretty early in the season, April, I think 17th. And manager called me in, and kind of like you've seen on the movies. I mean, really just, hey, Skipper needs to see you. Walked in there. He said the Astros are going to need you in Cincinnati tomorrow. They're on the road. They need bullpen help. Welcome to the show, right? And so an awesome moment. And then to your point about just the years and family support and the getting you to your games and providing for you, making those phone calls that, say, and you can get emotional talking about it right now of, hey, I did it, I made it. So that was awesome. And then obviously just kind of stepping foot on a big league mound for the first time and things like that were just wonderful. It was definitely kind of everything you would think would be in terms of excitement. Not so much in terms of kind of like what I thought it would be. Yeah, have a complete life and have all the joy and peace I ever wanted if I'm a big league ball player. But certainly an exciting time and one that I won't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. So then once you got into the big league clubhouse, and again, see your jersey hanging there in the locker room. Again, what was that like?
Yeah, that was even more surreal. That's when it really first hit me. As I walked in, I was pretty early to the clubhouse in Cincinnati that day, and it was exactly what you just stated. It was seeing the jerseys and seeing Bagwell and Biggio and Berkman and Wagner and all these big time big leaguers, Hall of Famers potentially, and then seeing my jersey hanging next to theirs was really a cool moment. It really was. I can picture it to this day, and that was really a time to kind of sit there and soak it in for a second because it's a whirlwind. I mean, you've been waiting on it and everyone's excited and it's a big deal. But that was the only time it was quiet in there. The jerseys were hanging up and I really got to go, oh, I'm here, So very, very cool moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, again, as somebody who never got to experience it, I just can't even imagine what that feeling was like for you.
Yeah.
But, so you, you kicked around in the big leagues for a while, ended up doing some more, um, independent ball and some stuff like that. And then you hit that rock bottom moment, which is a lot of what your book that's upcoming is, going to be talking about. And forgive me if I mess up the title here, but I believe it's From the Bullpen to the State Pen
You
is
nailed it.
the
That's
name of the
it. Yeah.
title.
Yeah.
And, tell me a little bit about, like you said, you thought once you got to the big leagues that this was going to be, you're going to be happy. This is everything you worked for, but there was still something missing. And then as you kind of, did that roller coaster from big leagues to AAA to independent and back and forth,
Yeah.
there's still something missing, which obviously, led you to making some bad decisions. So, um, tell me a little bit about that process that brought you to that rock bottom moment, and then where it got you to today to use, that, test and turn it into your testimony.
Yes, that's awesome. I love test into a testimony or your mess into a message. That's a
Yeah.
great way to put it. And the title of the book kind of gives away what my rock bottom ended up being, right? But it goes a little further back, really, Dan, just to growing up and just being shaped as a young man and trying to figure out who I wanted to be, who I looked up to, things of that nature. And I always share with people, I grew up in a good home. My parents are still married. It was rocky in the beginning because my dad battled with addiction, alcohol and drugs, but he was a big guy, a funny guy. He's quick to fight, and he was a good athlete. And so for me as a young boy, I looked up to him and I wanted to be like him. And I had an awesome mom. She was involved in the church, still as a pastor at Saddleback Church in California, and just a wonderful, God fearing, praying mom. And for whatever reason, I'm like, I want to be like dad. I want to go down that path. And he would even tell me all along, nah, this is not what you want. And so I always kind of struggled with the addiction. I would even say some mental health, trying to kind of cover up some pain and numb myself a little bit. So, and I always referred to it as that God shaped hole. I know that now, but at the time I had this hole in me and it was alcohol, trying, now that doesn't really do it, drugs, maybe promiscuity, chasing women, maybe that will make me a man, or whatever the case may be. And that theme would kind of carry through my career. And so when I first signed out of high school, 18 years old, I graduated in California. The very next day, reported to Fort Myers, Florida, across the country, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature, any of those things. And so, that was a pretty good devil's playground and a setup for me to just kind of entertain all those demons and addictions that I was battling. And I did that. And at that time, didn't necessarily think it was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but I wasn't living a faith-filled life. I did not have a surrendered life to Christ. And so I was just like, yeah, these are my choices. This is what I want to do. And, when folks like my dad have been down the road would tell me, how things end, I would say, well, you got to have fun until you were mid 30s. And I like having a good time, and I'm out here playing ball. And so, honestly, Dan, I'll fast forward a little bit, but all through the minors, especially those first 4 or 5 years, I wasn't really, respecting the gift that God gave me of baseball. I was kind of staying out late and not taking care of my body and things of that nature. And so I was doing okay on the field, but wasn't living up to my potential. And so essentially, that would carry over. And then in 1998, I was in the off season in the minor leagues, and I was at a church service. My mom always made sure we were there, and it was a Thursday night young adult service, and something kind of hit me different in the worship. And it was a song I had heard many, many times. It was called "I Stand in Awe of You," and I rose to my feet, and before I knew it, I was standing, and I was giving my life to Christ, and it was amazing. And I said the prayer. I know I was saved, but I really never understood the surrendered life every single day. And so I was 5 years sober after that point in time, from about 98 on to like '04, about 5 years sober. And so my career really took off because I was taking care of myself. And that's where I got some of the big league opportunities and all that. And then when a pretty serious life issue hit, it was a separation from my first wife. I wasn't seeing my kids as much. Now I had to figure out how grounded my faith was, and how was I going to respond to this. And the truth is, I didn't respond well. Those demons kind of started after 5 years of sobriety, saying the little things in my head like, you know what, you're more mature now. I bet you can handle this now. And all these guys are having a good time. Why don't you give it a shot? And so I fell back into all those off the field habits, that kind of slippery slope for me. And once I cracked that door and let them back in, it was really hard to fight back off. But at this point, I knew what was right and I knew what was wrong, and I was accountable for it. And it was like Paul says in the Bible, it's like, I want to do right, but I just can't seem to do it. And so I walked that life for quite a while until the rock bottom came in 2008, which I'm happy to discuss. I just don't know where you want to go in this.
No, so yeah, so 2008 rolls around,
Yeah.
and again, that's where you hit that rock bottom. So,
Sure. Sure.
How did you get there? And
yeah,
obviously that's what took you from the bullpen to the state pen. So,
yes, yes, it was.
tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. I was at this point in my career. I always refer to Bull Durham. I was the Crash Davis who had kind of got a little big league time and went back. The Rangers offered me a spot in AA to kind of mentor some of their young prospects. They had a really loaded team in Frisco, Texas. Elvis Andrews, Chris Davis, Derek Holland, just a bunch of young guys they knew would have good careers. And so I was honored. I'm like, sure, I'll go down there and help, kind of teach these guys work ethic and consistency, things of that nature. And so, but at the same time, I was the chapel leader. They looked up to me as a mentor on the team, as the older guy. But I was messed up. My thoughts were messed up. I was kind of living a double life, going out on the side. They would ask me to go out with them, and I'd say, oh, no, I can't do that. So I didn't want to let them down and let them know that I was, less than what they thought I was. And that would really catch up with me, because instead of getting help or addressing those issues, I would just keep stuffing them down and battling with them. And towards the end of that season, they were asking me all year, Puff, come out with us, come have a good time with us. And to the guys, I can't do it. I can ruin my life in one night. I've been close. I don't handle these things as well as some people, and I just don't think it's a good idea. And so I wouldn't, and I kind of fought that off for the whole season. And then towards the end, we were celebrating a championship. We were in the middle of the series, and I was driving into the ballpark one day, and I just kind of decided, you know what, maybe tonight I'll just go out with the guys. The season's over this weekend, and I always talk about just one choice, one night, one decision. If you kind of get out of your moral code for even just a second and catch yourself off guard, things can happen. And so that's what happened to me. I went out. It was Friday, September 13th, I believe. And it was just like any other day. I just went to the ballpark. We had a game. We started having a few drinks in the clubhouse. We went out. I got, overserved. I couldn't turn my motor off, which was the case for me. I knew this was how I handled things. So poor choice to even put myself in that situation. And September 14th was unlike any other day I'd had. Again, 15 years of pro ball, I was pretty routine oriented. I woke up in jail in an orange jumpsuit, surrounded by a bunch of other folks who were in jail. And I had called our clubhouse manager the night before and told him where I was to come bail me out. And he said he thought I was joking, but he thought he'd check anyway. And sure enough, I was there, and I don't remember it, which doesn't take any of the responsibility away. I was just asking him, like, how'd you end up here? What happened? And he said, you called me and came down, and Dan, I had committed a felony with intent, a burglary rehabilitation with intent to commit a felony. And I'm always happy to share more detail on it, but I'm always also respectful of who your listeners are. But at the end of the day, my thought processes to that point, feeling like I was, bigger than life or untouchable as a professional athlete, which we see a lot. Every time I see an athlete have that fall from grace, I'm like, oh man, because you're kind of set up to feel like, oh, we're kind of, 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Not at all. And I needed the humility, but unfortunately, in my case, there were so many other victims involved, not just a victim in my case, but my family and the people who looked up to me and all these things. And fast forwarding a little bit, we finished the season. I actually went and played the next day. I didn't tell anybody. And they picked up my case, and it ended up being a felony. And I got 5 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I had to go serve 3.5 years on that sentence. And it totally changed my life, my perspective. I finally, it shouldn't take this, but it did, that surrender prayer, not the prayer of, I had 9 months on bond before I knew what was coming.
Right.
And to that point, it was, I'll be good. Just get me out of this. I'll be good. I don't want to go to jail, And once I got the sentence and the bars kind of hit and it was reality, my new normal, I surrendered. And I just prayed and said, God, this is where I got myself. This is where my thoughts, this is my way. Now it's your way. And so show me what that is. And what that entailed was just starting from that day of trying to even be an encouragement or a light in a very dark place that prison is. And I found true joy and peace. I mean, like you said, playing big league ball and winning a World Series ring with the Red Sox, which I know is dear to your heart, and all these other things, never filled that God-shaped hole. I was happy and proud, but like mopping floors in prison after giving my life in surrender, I was joyful. And I was able to encourage others in that time and see people a lot differently. For guys who just made mistakes but are really good people. And so definitely a rough experience without a doubt, but the redemption that's happened since and kind of how God lifted me out of this and how he's used it has been really incredible and hopefully encouraging to others who have made poor choices.
Yeah. And it seems like at that point, you now took accountability for your actions, even though you were in such a mental state and so inebriated that you really didn't even understand how you got there, yeah. But you still took accountability. That even though you didn't really remember it, it was like, well, I did it. Here I am now. Absolutely. Now, how do we turn this thing around? So, yeah, I mean, quite amazing that like you said, even with playing big league ball and reaching a level of your profession that is so difficult to get to, you were still missing something, and then God had to take you to a point where you lost everything in a sense to say, okay, you did it your way. Now, do you want to try it my way, or do you want to keep doing it your way?
Right. And he's such a gentleman that he'll go, okay. And like, here's the thing, Dan, I've been out now for, it's been several years, I guess 7 or 8. And I started with just a real humble job at a AAA ballpark in Round Rock as a janitor. And I just loved every minute of it because I was at a ballpark and painting and staining and all these cool things. And then God kind of like elevated me another step. And, some people started asking for instructions again on pitching. And I didn't think anyone would want any part of that with me anymore. I mean, I had the shame and the guilt and, who's going to want me to coach their kid and who's going to want me to, and the couple showed that faith in me and that kind of gave me a little more confidence. And eventually to where now we have, 30 teams in a youth and high school program that I'm able to oversee and encourage and coach coaches and players. And so that's just all God. And then also just being humble enough to, as you said, go, look, I need to change this. To that point, it was like, okay, I had been, I had little slaps on the wrist here and there. And, but once the consequence goes away and fades away, it's kind of like, okay, we're good now. And it's more or less, I'm sorry I got caught, but I'm not sorry. And this was, to your point, like, I deeply hurt people. And that's not the kind of guy I want to be. And so from then on, just really taking inventory of that. And again, I had 3.5 years, locked away to really figure that out. I know Jonah only needed 3 days in the belly of the fish, but I needed 3.5 years because I'm a knucklehead. And you said seemingly, or in a sense, lost everything. I literally lost everything. I have right here, excuse me. I just saw this out of the corner of my eye. It's an onion sack. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah.
And when you walk out, that's all they give you. And all I had in there was my Bible and some hygiene that I had from inside. And yeah, no, I mean, I didn't have a glorious big league career. It was a lot of minor league time. And so any money I had went towards trying to stay out of that predicament. And I literally started life over. And, but again, just through the grace of God and family and support and, you know, hopefully being a good guy to folks along the way that were willing to reach out and lend a hand is just the redemption story is what's really exciting now.
Yeah. So do you keep that onion sack around to remind you of
Yes.
what that one bad decision can lead to?
I do.
That's
That's why it's right here. I have a picture of me over here when we moved into this house and pitching for the Astros. It's actually going to end up being the cover of my book. And the glass broke. It shattered. And so we took it out. We're like, oh no. And I was like, you know what? Let's leave it like that because I've been shattered. You know, it's me in a big league mound, but it's the shattered glass. And it's like the contrast really hit me. And actually, when they were thinking of the cover, I was like, that's really good. And actually, Yvette came up with the idea, and I was like, I love that. That's an awesome idea. So anyway, yes, those reminders are important, and it's not to dwell on or stay in that place or any of that, but it is to remember. If not for what keeps me sober and sane right now, I'm always one decision away from being put back in a predicament like that.
right.
So absolutely.
Yeah. And then you touched a little bit on it, but during that time when you were, trying to, find your place after you were out and, try to get some space in the game again, but yet you had all this shame. Um, how tough was it for you to, overcome that and say, you know what, you know, we have a God of grace, and even though there's probably still going to be a lot of humans out there that are going to judge me for what I did in the past, God's forgotten it, and He's moved on, and now I need to move on. And those who don't accept me, that's on them. But I know there's going to be some people out there to give me some opportunities. So what was that process like for you? It's really, God will forgive us immediately, but it takes some time for us to forgive ourselves. And that's a battle that we as humans have, quite often. So how long did it take for you to forgive yourself?
Well, that's a greuld question, and I'd probably say it's ongoing. It's
Yeah.
ongoing, to be honest with you. And I think the biggest thing for me is when you ask, how did I get to that point? It's yes, what God said in His Word and who He says I am, but it's constantly repeating that. I have affirmations of a whole bookmark that says who I am in Christ, and it's verses, and it's saying it over and over and over and over. Saying things like those who matter won't mind, and those who mind don't matter, and just kind of have to repeat these things, especially in the beginning. I always felt like everyone was looking at me and they knew something about me, and and it was very public what happened, and so it was very tough in the beginning. And I think what really helped me, and what I would encourage others to do have been in this situation, is it's not like I stepped out and everyone was like, oh, we trust you again and you're good and you'll never mess up, and you know what, you want a big league job. And no, it was, hey, we really know who you really are. So here we don't have much, but if you want to come clean around the stadium, I'm like, heck yeah. And just being diligent in the little things that He gives you, and then He'll just keep raising you up. And that's it was that process. And so where I am 7 or 8 years later is all just, it's little steps of, okay, prove that you're faithful in this. And all right, you're doing good. We're going to elevate you a little bit. And so really just that constant reminder. And then again, like I said, it's ongoing. So there's days now where those voices pop back in and go, who's going to want to hear your story? Why would you go on with Dan? And no one cares about your story, like the imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
So it never really ends, but it's just a daily, for me, if I'm in my word every morning, if I'm in constant prayer during the day, I'm doing affirmations, taking some time to focus on breathing a little bit, then it's probably going to be a good day in my thought space for the most part. If I get away from those things for any period of time, my mind, it's still capable of everything it always has been. So it's very important for that self-care, especially in my mind.
And it's kind of like the Lauren Daigle song "You Say." Just those lyrics I think resonate with everybody, because that's again a constant daily battle that we all go through, regardless of where we've been. Um, so fast forward kind of to what you're doing today. again, working with kids, and I'm sure there were a lot of people who initially were like, wait a second. I mean, this guy's got a record.
Oh yeah.
Do we want him around our kids? I guess first of all, what made you want to go back and give back to those kids, number one, and then number two, like what obstacles did you have to overcome to gain people's trust to say, yeah, you know what, he can teach my kid something because
Mm,
he's been to a spot where we don't want our kid to get to. And again,
right.
let him use his former mess as this message to these kids today.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. And I mean, the ultimate answer is God just put me in this position because there's just no way. It doesn't make sense. Now I'm a convicted felon. I have to register my address every year. It really is a deal where if I allow myself to go there, like why would anyone want that? But then I think how I'm gonna say earn that because it's been a gift, but it's just by using it, being very transparent, very vulnerable. With our program, when we get together as a program for a spring kickoff or something, I share my testimony for the new families that are here, saying, "Hey, and there's probably people that still would say, I don't know, I'm not sure," and that's okay. I understand that. And I know there's competitors of ours that love to use it. Don't go over there. And so I get all that. I'm up against all that, and it's hurtful in a way because you're like, man, I did my time. I'm really trying to help folks. But at the end of the day, God's always put people in my path that just really encourage me. And I get notes from the kids or the parents or, just appreciation notes that I'll read and just be humbled by and usually in tears about. And it's like, okay, that's why I'm doing it. And that's why he's put me here. So just keep going. And that's all it is. It's just, it took, like I said, it took time. The first time I was asked to do a pitching lesson, again, I was working at the Dell Diamond in Round Rock, and they had some cages back there. And I said, well, "Can I do a pitching lesson back there?" And they're like, "Sure." And the people showed up. A friend of a friend gave them my info, and I was really nervous. I'll go do a bunch of them after we're done, and love it. But I remember thinking, "Oh man, like, what do they think about me? Do they know? Do I need to share this right now?" All those kinds of things are just hard, and you don't know how to deal with them. So I think the biggest thing has been, like you said earlier, just really owning it, taking ownership, and also just getting ahead of it and being transparent. Like, hey, you can ask me questions. I am coaching your kid. I have kids. I would expect when my kids were little, I'd look at the registry and go, stay away from that house. Like, I get it. I'm a dad. So I really try to put myself in their shoes and understand that. There's times where obviously I get frustrated and it's like, oh, is it ever going to go away? And the answer is like, no, not really. You're just going to have to continue. And it just kind of keeps you humble and just
Yeah.
keep doing your thing. Yeah.
So you're talking about getting letters from players and parents and stuff like that. I know, for me, when I was still coaching, um, it seemed to me that those letters and notes and emails and stuff would come at the exact perfect time, where maybe you're having a bad day for whatever reason and you're questioning, why you're doing it. Maybe you just got 5 or 6 emails from, Johnny and Billy's mom and dad as to why he's not playing where you think he is. And then all of a sudden you get this one. And for me, it just erased every other negative email or comment that I might have gotten. And I mean, has it worked that same way for you? And again, how much of does that refill your cup and say, yeah, this is it. This is why we're doing it.
It has. You're spot on. That's exactly what has happened to me. And I tend to, and maybe just humans tend to really focus on the unhappy one, or even if they're not going to be happy no matter what. It's like, oh my gosh, we have such a good thing going, and these men. It's really about our coaches. It's not me, and as you know, it's about the coaches who pour into them. And I do coach myself, but we just have some great men coaching,
Yeah.
and that's the experience. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, I just know how much we care and how much we put into this, and it's frustrating when you get those emails or you get the ones that just never happy. It really is. And then to your point, it never fails where one comes in and I have a group chat with some of my coaches. And I'm like, guys, this is why we do it. I needed this right now. We've been going back and forth about Johnny or whatever, Billy. And it's like, and then you got these folks that are really seeing it for what it is. And so, we've always said God's going to bring the ones we need. And there's times where you got someone who's really good and you want to hang on to them, and it's just not working out. And you're like, you know what, we gotta let that go. We're about culture as well as the other. And then back a little bit back to the point about earning trust and things of that nature. In the beginning, especially, I had a lot of letters of recommendation or character references, like guys like Nolan Ryan and our pastor, and just some people that were able to come along and go, hey, we know what happened, and we knew him leading up to that, and we know him now, and we'll go ahead and vouch for him. So that was helpful, and something I really needed for certain things I wanted to do, whether it was like get an insurance license or different things. And I'll encourage my kids all the time. I'm like, guys, I don't know if I can get a job at McDonald's today if I just go apply.
Right.
Maybe not, but look what God can do if you're faithful and you continue to educate and encourage and do those things.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny you talk about, as you're pouring into those kids. And one of the things that's been an incredible blessing for, both myself and my wife is now that we're traveling, we've been able to reconnect with a lot of my, former players who are literally scattered, throughout the country here. And, when I coached, and it seems like you've kind of have the same coaching philosophy where it was really, anytime we stepped in the field, we wanted to win, but that wasn't our sole goal. It was more about teaching these kids life lessons through the game and understanding the process. And, again, that's not necessarily, in today's youth sports culture, not necessarily the way everyone goes about it. So you're competing with a lot of other organizations who are, look, we're going to get your kid a scholarship. We're going to do this. We're going to win, 85% of our games this year, and all that other stuff. And it does become frustrating at times. But one of the things that's been an incredible blessing for Sandy and I is just being able to reconnect with these guys I've coached and seeing, those seeds that you planted years ago coming, to blossom, and being able to see that fruit and that fruit of that labor. And we've got kids who are, and again, I'll always call them kids. They're, in their mid 30s now and whatever, but they're always going to be kids to me. And, what they've done on the baseball field is one thing, but what they've done off of it is, absolutely amazing. So, I mean, we got kids who are in charge of scholarship organizations in Arizona and, running AV companies all across the country. We've got, one kid who's still involved in baseball now is actually the assistant general manager for the Astros, who just turned 30, and he's, already at that level. And, so when you see that, it's incredible. So with some of your older players, have you had that experience yet of them coming back? And, again, I had 30 years of it under my belt. So you might not have as long of a record of how these kids coming back, but have you had that experience of some of these kids coming back and you're like, wow, you know what, we played a role in where they are today?
Absolutely, 100%. And to your point, not nearly as much. We've been doing this about probably 7-8 years now, and so yes, there's just times where they're just struggling and they need encouragement, and maybe the parent will text me and say, hey, just want you to know they're at college or they're doing this and it's been a rough go, and so you get to encourage, or they'll just reach out and just check in and say thanks for everything and being a mentor and those types of things. And it definitely is why you do it, and it keeps you going, but it reminds you, and hearing you say that is encouragement to me. So it's just like, that's right, that's why we're doing it. I'm competitive, man. I love to win, and I don't like when guys go their places, and I don't like when people make false promises. And I'm like, no, they can't do that. But because we're very honest and very transparent. It's like, hey, yeah, there are scholarships, and we've had some guys drafted, but that's all on you and what you're able to do, and then we can make the connection for you, but we can't do that for you. And so we're very honest, but then you might have someone going, yeah, we can do this, this, and this. And parents are just trying to do the best for the kids, so they don't know, and they may listen to that. But the encouraging notes, and what's really been cool, and you probably had this, Dan, is we're just now at a point we've had a couple guys come back and coach for us.
Yeah.
And they know what we're about, and they know what we accept and what we don't, and their culture, and it's awesome. So I can't wait to get further down the road. And I always tell certain guys, I'm like, you're going to be a coach one day for us, just whenever you're done. And so we've got to do that a couple times now, and that's really neat in itself, because you see how maybe you or one of your coaches affected them, and they want to come back and do the same.
Yeah, that is incredibly fulfilling when you get to that point. So let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about the book. So again, obviously you're okay with being vulnerable and sharing sharing your messy background in hopes that it, helps others. So you want to get, you do speaking engagements and obviously podcast appearance and stuff like that. And now you wanted to write a book to kind of get that message out there as well. So what was the inspiration behind, getting your story out there and wanting to share that with the world?
Yeah, it's just been something I felt called to do. I would, to your point, I would do a speaking engagement or speak at a men's group, FCA, whatever it may be, and people would say, "Hey, you should write a book." And I always felt like I do feel called to do that, but I dragged my feet for the longest time. I would start it and pick it up and put it down. And then just here recently, I met some awesome men through some people in the motivational speaking ranks or space, and they're Streamlined Books, Alex Demchek and Will Severns, and a buddy of mine named Stephen Mackey, who speaks all over the place, introduced us and said, because he asked me, like, what do you need? And I honestly, Dan, was like, I think what I actually need is someone to hold my hand and do it. Like, that's what I need. Because I've tried to, get into it, and I've got my journal that I kept all through prison, which is cool. And that's really what I needed, was the structure of it. And so that's what these guys do. And so we got together and they heard the story and they interviewed me and said, and let's bring this to life. And so that accountability and that help with them for me has been great. And I had other people telling me, well, I wrote my own, that's what you need to do. And for me, I needed the hand holding. And so I finally found the right people at the right time and the right time in my life to do it. And so again, always felt called to do it. Always want to do it. My kind of motto has always been, if my story helps one person, it's worth telling. So if today one person takes something good, and that really comes back to being an 8x10 cell, just crying out to God, going, well, what are we going to do with this? Like, if you, and he just basically said, if someone asks you to tell it, go tell it. And so a book's maybe just a way to kind of get it a little more widespread. Maybe it just helps one. I have no idea. I have no preconceived notions of it being a bestseller or getting wealthy off it. That's not the reason behind it by any means. But if it's helpful to people and maybe even like a legacy for my children and stuff, then that's worth it.
Yeah. Did you find going through that and kind of reliving that, because I know for me, when I wrote, both my books, it was a very kind of cathartic and therapeutic process, just going back and reliving some of those memories. Was it similar to you?
It is. It has been that. And a lot of times, I think each chapter we're kind of starting out with an entry from my journal. And so going back and reading through those and kind of where I was in that time. And it again helps me perspective and just being grateful and wow, just simply just having freedom right now or privacy to use the restroom, whatever, just things that you didn't have for a few years. And then you read it back in your journal and you're like, oh, wow, that's right. So yeah, in that regard, it certainly has been. And I just hope it's helpful to people and serves a good purpose.
Yeah, I love that. So we've covered so much, and I could probably talk to you for another hour or so, but we want to not drag on to turn into a Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast. But is there anything that we didn't cover that you would want to tell my listeners?
I think we kind of was interwoven in everything we said, but essentially just if you've made a mistake, big or small, mine was obviously huge. If you've made a mistake and you feel the guilt and the shame of that, I just really encourage people to take power in you're just one thought, one surrender, one change or shift in your mindset away from completely changing everything for the good. I did that one night for the bad. I mean, one decision, right? One choice. But then the same is true for those that are listening. They're like, man, I screwed up and no one has screwed, because the mind will tell you no one's messed up as bad as you are. And you're this and you're that. It's like, no. And I think that's why I share it. It's like, look, I had it all going and I went down this path. So you're not any different. And so I would just encourage people to really talk to themselves more than they listen to themselves. So those voices are going, nah, you can't, you shouldn't. Just keep pouring in, like I said earlier, the affirmations, for me, God's word. And if you're a man of faith, which I know you are, or a woman of faith, that's obviously the answer. and if you're not, find what works for you, but it's got to be pouring in the positive and cultivating the right mindset. Because if you don't, the thoughts won't stop. They're going to keep coming in and they're not going to be the ones that you want to entertain.
Yeah, I love that. So Brandon, how can people find you? Where can they get I know the book's not quite out yet. It's going to be out here in a couple of weeks. But how can they find you, find more information about what you're doing if they want to engage you in a speaking engagement, or, just reach out and tell them their story, and maybe your story can help them. How can they find Brandon Puffer?
Yeah, that would be awesome. It's brandonpuffer.com is my website. And then Coach Puff Positive on Twitter. But yeah, pretty much everything you can find on the brandonpuffer.com, just to keep it simple. Puffer. So yeah, that's it. I would love to hear from folks. It's just great when you go through something and then God just uses it for those that are like, hey, I've been in that situation and I want to talk to somebody who's actually been there, and I want encouragement. So yeah, it'd be great to connect that way.
No doubt. And book will be available, I'm sure, on Amazon and through your website, and where, anywhere else. Is there going to be a book tour or anything like that planned yet at this point, or is that kind of all up in the air right now?
Yeah, it's up in there in terms of dates and things of that nature, but there is a marketing team working on all that. And so once it launches, probably we'll be going and talk about it. But yeah, it'll be on Amazon, and we'll put everything on the social media and the website and all that good stuff. So yeah, it'll be hopefully mid to late October, but we'll definitely keep everybody posted through the website.
Awesome. Brandon, that brings me to my final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So what's one of the things that Brandon does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
Yeah, I'm going to say just smile at people. I mean, honestly, I know it sounds simple, but it's just crazy how we can just go through the day in that zombie state and you're looking at people and sometimes a simple smile, and they almost look at me like, kind of weird. But then they smile and it's like, I made someone smile. And so I just encourage people to smile or say, send an encouraging text or word to somebody, because it can really go a long way. We don't really know what people are going through.
It really does. And I think this here is episode 150 or so of my podcast. And I would say that I've gotten that answer of smile at people is probably 40% of the people that smile and a wave, something like that.
Awesome.
So that is a big thing. I think it is,
Yeah.
It's a little thing that turns into a big thing. So I love that answer. And you're right. It can change someone's day. They can be having the worst day, and then all of a sudden pass them in the parking lot or on the walking path, and you just give them a little smile, and all of a sudden it does brighten their day. So that is definitely one of those little things that goes a long way. So Brandon, I really enjoyed the conversation here, and like I said, I could definitely talk to you for a much longer period of time about everything we talked about and then some, but I know we're on some time constraints. So for folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. And while you're on the website, pick up a copy of my book, Journey My Mother's Son, Volume 1, or The Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach. Brandon, again, really appreciate taking the time. Really enjoyed the conversation.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it as well.
You bet.